Good morning, welcome to 59 Minutes. My name is Levi Kones, and to join me in having a discussion today on the political happenings, not really so much the political happenings, but really the end of the Uhuru era, the beginning of the Ruto one, is Dr. Caroline MOSE.
Pleasure to be here.
Glad to have you here.
Asante sana.
You're a political strategist, a political guru.
Not a guru, not a strategist. I think those words are very big words and I'm not even sure what they mean.
Yeah.
I am a governance and cultural studies expert, so my work is to read the goings on and just to interpret them through those specific lenses.
Okay.
Yes.
Let's start with the first one.
Which one?
With the president, Uhuru.
Uhuru, the outgoing president.
Be there tomorrow.
Will he be there tomorrow? That's a good question. I don't think he has a choice at this point, because the things that have happened in the last week have actually shown him. This is not just about him. This is about the country. So he should be there. He should be there to hand over power peacefully, amicably, and then walk off into his. I'm even seeing in the Daily Nation today this very beautiful picture of him like walking into the sunset.
Looks kind of sad.
Well, not really sad, maybe poignant, not necessarily sad. I mean, we knew he was going to do his 10 years, and then after 10 years, you exit stage. So I think he should be there. He should be there as this last act of being a statesman. He should
According to the program, what I've seen,
yes,
of course they arrive, the dignitaries arrive, everybody arrives, Deputy President-elect arrives, President-elect arrives, then the president, outgoing
president,
arrives. He does his final march, and then they begin the swearing-in process. And after they are done, he gets to give a speech. Before now, the new deputy, the new president, what do you think he's going to say in his speech?
It's hard to say.
Let's just crystal ball it. Will it be long? Will it be short? What do you say?
I don't think it will be long. But again, it depends on how he arrives, like in what state of mind that he gets there. He might even decide not to give the speech. He might decide to give a short speech. I don't think it will be a long speech necessarily. Nobody wants a repeat of what happened in 2002 when Moi was handing over power. And there was all this booing and all this noise. Yeah. And the public sentiment towards him, and I think he's aware, is not necessarily at 100% positive. There's a lot of sentiment that he's done this and the other, and he should exit stage very quickly. So I don't think he'll be giving a very long speech. I think it will be a very short speech just to say thank you to Kenyans, hopefully, and exit. Given
the kind of vibes he has with his deputy soon-to-be president, you think he gets to say, kama nilikosea, like Moi, unisame?
He might. And the reason I'm saying he might is, I know we all talk about the dynasties and how the dynasties have been killed and destroyed.
Yeah.
But I think that's just half the story. The dynasties are not necessarily just political. They're also economic. Uhuru and his family have a lot of property, have a lot of businesses that need to keep running. So in as much as there is this negativity towards him in terms of, he's the outgoing, a political figure, we also have the other side. In many ways, we need him to keep the businesses running so that the country remains a bit stable. And in many ways, he also needs the powers that are coming in, the powers that be or will become tomorrow, to keep his enterprise, his conglomerate, in that sense running. So he might actually do that, not as a last act as president, but as a continuing act as an entrepreneur, because that is what, he's not just going to be sitting down somewhere and sipping cocktails for the rest of his life. He's building a city in Northlands. He's running his businesses. His family has a lot of property. So I think as a state of, saying, I will continue as a business person, as an entrepreneur, he might actually say that.
Yeah. There's a mood on social media. Yesterday, there was, of course, over this weekend, there was a story about how they're going to relay the TV coverage.
Yes.
And that, of course, gave rise to all manner of discussions. Yes. And there's this mood that, they are getting back at some media stations. And it seems to have taken a rise of its own.
Yes.
I think generally people are the people who voted for the Ruto axis.
Yes, the Kenya Kwanza.
Kenya Kwanza. And I'm talking now about Wananchi.
Yes.
You think there's a general feeling towards seeking of vengeance to the guys who vilified us in whatever ways? And will it play out on the big stage?
That's a very interesting and loaded question. I think that the public in many ways is still in campaign mode. Still looking at this as Kenya Kwanza versus Azimio. But I think the Kenya Kwanza side, one hopes that have moved beyond that dichotomy. And I'm actually a person who is on record as saying I really dislike dichotomies. Seeing things either as black or white, seeing things as good or evil. Because there's a lot of grays in between that people miss. We miss the nuance in the middle. One thing that we need to realize about the media is that in the last 10 years, media has actually developed a life of its own. Media had become very partisan. There was a report that was launched in a project between the University of Nairobi and I can't remember which other, So there was this where it said that media in Kenya had become very partisan. Media had started pandering to their owners. But in between that report, there was also the idea that in as much as the media I work for might be owned by somebody, I have my own leanings as well. So there, I think the life that media had developed in the last 10 years, this is the point at which media needs to take stock and say, this is how we have behaved in the last 10 years of Uhuru government. This is the trajectory that we took as media. What do we do going forward? Because the way things are going, there seems to be an idea that KBC, which had become sidelined, might become revived again. I don't know how that will look like. I don't know if that will continue to say that it is owned by the state and therefore it gets the first stab at the cake. But private media also, I think, needs to take stock because essentially media needs to be the fourth estate. Media needs to be the entity, the institution in an ideal world that actually does not necessarily pander to power, but puts a check on power. But that role, I think, had become lost.
But we take a lot of our, how do I call it, our pointers from the Western world.
Yes.
And in the West, media is not bipartisan.
That is true.
I mean, you tune to Fox, you know what you're getting.
Yes.
You tune to CNN, you know what you're getting.
Yes.
You tune to, MCN, all those things. Maybe have we reached a point where media should just declare? Look.
Not necessarily.
The way some media is known to be Republican, some media is known
to be, yes.
Yes. Just declare this is so when I'm tuning in to this station or that station.
This is what I'm getting.
This is what I'm getting.
We could do that. But media does not exist in a vacuum. Look at the US. The US is in a mess right now.
Yeah.
If we just look at the country, New York is in shutdown because of polio. So these are the things we need to look at. We sometimes pander to the West and create this model that they are the model, the people we benchmark against. But I think the West is itself in decline.
Is in the expectation of bipartisanship too? I'm sorry to cut you short.
No.
Are we raising too high of a standard? Because media people here in the media house, people have views.
People have views.
And sometimes the views play out.
Yes.
There's a way. Like I don't know what you do when you pick up the paper, but when I pick up the paper and I read it and I look, I can see views of a writer, opinions, leanings, just by a story, even the way it's presented. You can see it on the news.
Yes.
Whether it comes as headline or story number 2 or story number 5, there's a reason why.
There's a reason why. But should that be what media is?
And even the bites we choose to pick.
Regardless of my leanings, when I sit here as a person who is in media, don't I at least owe my listeners or my viewers a space in which I can transcend my own personal biases? That is the responsibility of media. I may belong to this side of the divide or the other side of the divide, but that is irrelevant. When I sit here to talk about news, when I sit here to give insights, I owe it to my listeners and my viewers to transcend those biases. What media has done is not bother to transcend those biases. The biases have been very open. Say that this media house, has got a leaning towards Kenya Kwanza, for example, or let's say even Azimio. That's fine, that's okay. But we owe the listener, we owe the viewer transcending, going beyond those personal biases and giving at least something incisive.
Yeah.
Something that the listeners can sit and say, yes, we know that this media house leans towards this, but when we listen to the news at least is to some extent, not 100%, to some extent objective. That the way news clips are aired, you know, there is fairness. And that is the thing that I'm talking about. When there is obvious lack of, you know, fairness, obvious bias, then it means we are now pushing media to a corner and saying that your corner is over there. What happens when you need to report things that are in the other corner, but you've gone and you've pushed yourself into that corner? It means you're unable to become a journalist. A journalist is not somebody who journals according to their own biases. You journal what is happening in society, regardless of those biases.
So what's the way forward here in terms of, now we have this election?
Yes.
Clearly, media fell one way or another.
Yes.
I think it would be fair to say that.
Yes.
And now, you know, when we take stock, what should be the way forward here? Or will a crackdown on media then make us take stock?
I really don't like the language of crackdowns or the practice of crackdowns, because they don't get us anywhere. And this is the problem with Kenya. We love crackdowns. We love when the baton falls heavily on people's heads. We live in a society where we operate via threats and those so-called crackdowns. I really don't like. I don't think a crackdown is something that is necessary. Is it something that might come? Probably it might. And I wouldn't really support the idea of a crackdown, because what does a crackdown achieve other than to instill fear in the population? And I know at this point in time, you know, the people on the Kenya Kwanza side who won are feeling very buoyant and very happy. But we should all be concerned when there is a so-called crackdown on media, because at the end of the day, the goings on in the country will only come to us through the media. And yes, we know there is social media and everybody now is a journalist. But even those freedoms might be subject to some review. You know, we can no longer, and I think that is where the media is. We can no longer operate in a wild west where there are no rules. And that is how we have been operating. I can go on social media and type anything and say anything, whether it's verified or not. That's not my business. And I think those are things where we need now to sit and take stock. Media definitely needs to sit and take stock and say, yes, this is where we are, but where do we go forward? What is the way forward?
Speaking of taking stock.
Yes.
Opposition.
Yes, opposition.
Do we get to have an opposition? I see some people say, you know what, let's down the tools. Considering the, what I would like to call cannibalization of the opposition in the last recent weeks. Okay, some people have been poached, so to speak.
Yes.
Some people have willingly, you know, offered themselves for poaching.
Yes, they have. They have presented themselves.
Present, say, hey, take me here, take me here. And there are those who say, I heard Governor Mutula Kilonzo say, nini, hakuna mtu hataki kuwa kwa serikali.
That is true.
Hata wamechoka.
Now, the language of opposition is very interesting, because the Constitution does not give room for any opposition. After 2010, the new Constitution talks about minorities and majorities in both houses. You know, whether you're talking about Senate or Parliament. So essentially, there is no opposition.
So kila mtu ni serikali?
Not kila mtu ni serikali. We have what we call the minority. Minority are usually the people who did not necessarily, on the side that didn't win. Those are the ones that are supposed to take charge of the various committees we have in Parliament. You've got PIC, you've got the PSC, you've got different. Those
committees.
Yes, those committees are where the work is done. This is where, you know, you check government, whether you're talking about the budgets, you've got the Parliamentary Accounts Committee. Whether you're talking about the law, you've got I think it's called the Committee on Judiciary. This is where the work is done. And this is where to check excesses. Of course, you can sit in the House and make your submissions for or against a bill or an issue that has been raised on the floor of the House. But it is in the committees where the work begins. So when you hear people saying they're downing tools, that is a cause for concern, because who is going to be sitting in those committees and what are they going to be doing? Who is going to be, when a new budget is being planned, who is going to check that this budget is mwananchi friendly, for example? When decisions are being made, whether it is at the national level or the county level, who is going to be checking those decisions? So that is where the work of the opposition is supposed to happen. So these people who are downing tools are really, this is a disservice, not just to the to the people in Azimio who feel they did not win, but to the country at large. Because when decisions are made and decisions are passed and bills are passed and they become law, they don't affect one side of the political divide, they affect all of us. At the end of the day, all of us will be lining, or will be going to the supermarket or any other shop to buy unga. Unga will be the same price for everybody. Fuel will be the same price for everybody. When your tokens go up, they go up for everybody. So these people who are downing tools, for me, that's a cause for concern. To me, it shows some form of political laziness, that people don't want to do the work. And yes, these positions, they all, they sound very lucrative.
Maybe it's part of those 5, stages of heart.
No. We have no time for that. You heart in private. You've been given a mandate by the people. The people are not sitting here waiting for you to mourn and go through the 5 stages.
Can hurt. You don't get to hurt yourself.
You get to hurt, but when you're hurting and you're being paid very well, you wanted to add massages to your medical cover, and all those other things. You don't get to tell us that you're hurting and you need time to heal. We need time to heal, but we also are grappling with very high cost of living, for example. We are grappling with the CBC. We are grappling with zero NHIF. So you don't get to have the luxury to tell us you're going through the 5 stages of mourning when we don't have the chance to go through those 5 stages ourselves. So their work is to get down to work. If they want to go for therapy, they have money. They can go for therapy after hours. But they need to get down to work and protect the interests of the common mwananchi. Whether that mwananchi voted Azimio, whether that mwananchi voted Kenya Kwanza, whether that mwananchi voted for Wajakoya or Maore. We need these people to stop the games and get down to work. That's all that, and they're already collecting salaries anyway at the end of this month. They need to get down to work. Forget all these things. These are just sideshows. Get down to work.
Get down to work. We're going to take a quick break on that note. We'll be right back after these messages. Don't go away.